So Warhammer 40k currently advertises itself as a game with 3 ways to play. Open play is meant to be very free and involves picking units to a certain power level and then just playing one of 3 missions. Narrative play involves a structure that allows your army to improve over a series of games by tracking various sorts of resource points. And finally, match play is intended for balanced games, which we know as competitive or tournament games a lot of the time, and it uses points, all of the rules, has various mission options, and includes stuff like secondary objectives. But these don't really work. Narrative and crusade missions look really interesting, but they're obviously going to work better in a structured club, league or event system, not just a one-off game. Open play, on the other hand, is simple but has so little structure and variation that it's just ignored. Not having a format isn't a format. So generally, match play has become the normal way to play. And match play is a bit of a weird dumping ground. As well as being the intended place for the grand tournament pack and organised play events, it's also got things like Maelstrom of War inside it. But there are 2 bigger problems with having match play as a de facto standard. First, since match play is already the tournament way to play, the assumption is that you're going to be using all of the rules, which is a lot of work before a game. Warlord traits, stratagems, spells, relics, secondary objectives. It's fine if you've got one list you're working on and tweaking to be the best, but it's not great if you've just got some models and you want to get a game going quickly. And while all that stuff does provide variety, it also has a big downside. That all adds mental work to your gameplay experience. Some armies can have almost 100 stratagems available to them in a normal game. Again, fine if you want to pore over all the books for hours to find the best combo for your tournament winning list, but not great if you're just trying to remember them. It also leads to 2 things people have started to criticise about 8th and 9th edition. One is combo hammer, the idea that you can find the winning set of combos to have unkillable units, and the other one is gotcha moments, because it's kind of impossible to know exactly what the enemy army can do. People on YouTube now make gotcha guides because of this. So it should be clear that match play with literally everything turned on is fine for some formats, but it's not perfect for every format. Secondly, while you can use match play to play any sort of game, it's also very clearly the competitive way to play, and I think having it as the only option can skew the community towards competitive. Again, fine for your tournament games, but a competitive scene in a small group can have problems. It creates an arms race. It invalidates your models much more quickly than normal, and it can make it brutal for new players to try and get into. What I think the game needs is a good basic format. A format with enough variety to be interesting, but without either loads of pre-game work or a massive disadvantage if you don't have time to do the pre-game reading. And ideally one that makes a really clear distinction between when you're playing a normal game and when you're playing a competitive game. And yeah, I get it. We could just do this every game, right? We could just decide which rules we want to use and which rules we don't want to use and try and find someone to play them. But without an agreed format, it's going to be much more difficult to find someone who wants to play with that mix of rules. So that's what I think open play should be. Not a complete free-for-all, or the minimal set of learner rules we all ignore at the moment, but a structured, basic level game, which assumes that you're playing something quick with someone you know, but which has more variety to it than the current open play offering. Here's how I do that. First, like now, open play should be the first thing presented in the 40k rulebook as the standard way of playing a game. In open play, your army is a single detachment. We can either decide it's any of the normal detachments you like, or we could have an open play detachment, something like a smaller battalion with a fortification and a Lord of War attached. You don't specify a table size or limits on duplicate units or anything like that. Armies are built to either a power or a points level. You could say that power level is standard, but points is an option. Further to that, warlord traits and relics are also options. A basic game doesn't really need them. And all 3 of those things are really easy, simple things to discuss before the game. Stratagems are a slight exception. We could just make command points and stratagems another option, but they're a really big addition if you choose to switch them on. I think there's a middle ground, and that is to have a special open play stratagem system, which works a bit like cards in Necromunda. For every, say, 500 points in the army, you get 1 stratagem card you can play during the game once. Like Necromunda, they could either be selected, which takes a bit of pre-game planning, or just random where you discard the ones you can't use. This means you'll get a few cool tricks, but you're not at a disadvantage if you don't have time to memorize the 100 extra special rules. Open play games would have a set of 6 basic missions and maybe 3 to 6 deployment types, which should provide some variation. These could just be the standard 6 missions from previous editions with simple secondaries like Slay the Warlord. As I said, this is all presented as standard 40k, the basic way of playing a one-off game with a friend. Match play, with its multiple detachment armies, secondary objectives, command points, and literally everything turned on, or narrative play with the Crusade system and organised campaign structures and unit advancement, are presented as 2 different versions of like advanced 40k. This means that you can market all the fun stuff that Games Workshop release as part of the open play structure. So only war cards are part of the open play structure. Maelstrom of War should probably be part of the open play structure, maybe as a deck of cards which, like Only War, includes the 6 missions and the rules for play. Hell, I'd really like to see something like the old Battle Missions book where each faction gets 3 narrative fun-themed missions. I think that sort of structure would fill a niche currently missing in 40k. Structured, casual games, so that when you say, oh, I just want to play open play, people know what you're talking about. I think that would be way more useful to the game than just saying open play is a format and then giving people no incentive to play it. Anyway, let me know what you think below. Thanks for watching.